Hi, we're going to be looking at Rutherford's Planetary, sometimes also called nuclear model now. We have to kind of look at the position where we're at. J.J. Thomson has given us his plum pudding, sometimes called raisin bun model, and it seems to explain the observations he made with the cathode ray tubes. Millikan has done his experiment, which allowed us to now have both the charge and mass of electrons, so we know everything about electrons. Where do we go next? And do we even have to go somewhere next? That's kind of where we're sitting right now when Rutherford comes into the picture. So Rutherford comes up with his own experiment, known as the gold foil experiment. And I have to emphasize here that he doesn't say, oh, I'm going to come up with something to try to show that J.J. Thomson is wrong. That's not where he's coming from. Instead, what he's doing is just trying to come up with another experiment to try to verify what we think is going on inside atoms. So the way he's got it set up is a radioactive source that he's got inside this lead box that just has a little hole cut in it. That way, as the radioactive source goes through decays and emits alpha particles, the alpha particles will shoot out only from that hole just on their own. And they're not going incredibly fast by the standards we have for little teeny tiny things like electrons zipping around, but still, they've got their thing. They're going along okay here. And then significantly what he's got here is a sheet of gold foil. Now, you got to understand just how insane gold is. We talk about it being very malleable and ductile, but that just doesn't really get you the idea of how extreme this is. You could take an ingot of gold. An ingot of gold is about half the size of your cell phone, so it's not a brick of gold. It's a like chocolate bar sort of size piece of gold. You can hammer it out so thin, and it'll still hold together because it's so malleable, that you could hammer it out to a thin sheet that would actually cover roughly a football field. And that's basically what they're doing here. They hammer out the gold to ultra thinness until they've got a sheet that is so thin, it's only about 2 to 3 atoms thick. They had to come up with these special ways of making hanger systems to be able to lift it up without it tearing. And they described that when they would hold up this sheet, you could actually faintly see through it. Like, this is just insane. But what they were trying to do is make sure that when the alpha particles go and they hit that gold, at most, they're interacting like with 1 or 2 atoms. So what we're seeing is really the alpha particles truly having something go on with a gold atom. It's kind of what we're hoping for. Now on the other side, he puts this screen and he's coated it in zinc sulfide. And that choice is kind of special because zinc sulfide, when alpha particles strike it, it makes almost like a little burn mark is what it looks like, but it makes a little dot. And so what he could do is look at where these alpha particles have come through, and by honestly counting the dots, looking at where they appear on the screen, he gets an idea of the path that they're going at and how common it is, how frequently they'll go one path as compared to another path. Now, of significance in this, like I was saying, he's not setting this up in order to try to get it working against J.J. Thomson and all of his ideas. No, rather, he predicts that this should support J.J. Thomson's plum pudding model. In it, he really does believe that because the plum pudding model says that we have this thin sort of spread out positive charge, the alpha particles should go straight through it. And you might say, but it's positive and positive. The alpha particles are positive, this goo is positive, but to him, if the plum pudding model is correct, it's so thinly spread out that the alpha particles, there's like nothing there really for them to interact with. They should just go pretty much straight through. So he thinks pretty much straight through on the other side of the zinc sulfide on the screen. He should just see a whole bunch of dots almost exactly undeflected going straight through. So he runs the experiment. Now, while I'm discussing this, I'm going to get this little video playing in the background so you kind of get an impression of what it was that he was seeing. As the alpha particles shot out, they were interacting with the gold, and he just wasn't seeing nearly as much of everything going straight through as he expected. It is true that a lot of the alpha particles do end up going straight through, because there is a lot of empty space there. So there are a lot that go straight through. But some of them were getting deflected at rather large angles. And he didn't really expect that at all. He thought, sure, some of them might get shot off at weird angles, but that shouldn't be like the main thing. But the part that really surprised him is that at first when he was looking, he was completely missing some of the alpha particles. They weren't going through at all. So he had to kind of move around stuff so the zinc sulfide screen was surrounding it more. And that's when he realized some of the alpha particles were actually bouncing back. Oh, for some reason this won't let me click again. Some of the alpha particles, besides going off at these weird angles, large angles, some of them were bouncing back basically the direction they came from. Now, if J.J. Thomson's plum pudding model is correct, then that simply shouldn't be happening. That's just not a thing. So when Rutherford described this to people, he said it was almost as incredible as if you had fired a 15-inch shell at a piece of tissue paper and it came back and hit you. He's talking about shooting like an artillery shell, and having it bounce back from something like hitting tissue paper. It was that surprising to him. It was that staggering that this was occurring. But he basically realizes that that means fundamentally the understanding that they had of the plum pudding model had to be wrong. So he asks himself, what would actually give him these results? And his answer is, I gotta get to jump past there, the classic Rutherford nuclear planetary model. Now, the reason it was called the nuclear model is because he puts the nucleus there. He's got this central location. I should actually jump here and show you this, where he says it's got to be like, instead of spread out positive goo, there's this super, super concentrated positive center, the nucleus. And that would explain why, not very often, but sometimes, an alpha particle that just happened to be coming pretty much straight in on the nucleus would get close to it, but then the incredible electrostatic repulsion of positive to positive would stop it and make it shoot back roughly the way it came from. That was the only way to explain that stuff. So, why are a whole bunch still going mostly straight through? Mostly because most of the atom is empty space. There's just nothing there to hit, nothing to interact with. Well, what's going on then? Where are the negative charges? Because J.J. Thomson had shown conclusively there are little separate negative charges. Well, they're spinning around out here. And to use the word orbit isn't bad, because that's why we sometimes call it the planetary model, because this is kind of like the sun with planets orbiting. Now, significantly, in Rutherford's way of coming up with this, those electrons are just whizzing around wherever, okay? He doesn't have a specific location for them, but they're just kind of whizzing around with the nucleus in the center. Rutherford presents this, and you have to basically understand that this isn't something he comes up with overnight. This is years and years of work. And when he's got it done, he's ready to present it, writing papers about it, all that sort of stuff. And then he does something almost odd, considering how many years of work this is. And it's also one of the reasons why, when people say to me, who do you admire as a physicist? And they always think I'm going to answer Einstein, because everybody knows Einstein. Einstein's great and everything like that. But no, it's more people like Rutherford, because he comes right out and says to people, this is what my model is. And of course it's wrong. but this is what your evidence leads you to, and if you think it's wrong, fix it, make it better. But he says, no, I can't, because it's not my experiment that shows this is wrong. In fact, my experiment fully supports this is what's happening. No, it's that there's something else going on that shows this is impossible. This cannot be correct. So what is it? Well, Rutherford is a pretty smart cookie, and he's been keeping up on all the new crazy stuff going on in quantum mechanics, because by this time period, quantum mechanics is a thing. And he's also been trying to keep up on even older stuff, like everything that Maxwell said for his postulates and all of that. And he realizes there's something wrong here. There's something going on that he can't explain. So Rutherford's failure, and let's call it a successful failure because he realizes it and kind of points it out, is he says, hey, electrons are orbiting my nucleus. That means they're essentially doing something that we can think of as being, like circular motion, or at least something like it. And if they're doing some sort of motion like this, that means that they're doing accelerated motion. But wait a second. If the electrons are accelerating, Maxwell said that means they'll be producing EMR, because anytime we have accelerating charges, we produce EMR. Okay, that's a bit of a problem, because if the electrons are releasing energy as they're doing their orbiting, that must also mean that they're releasing energy that would cause them to actually slow down. If you're losing energy, if you're emitting energy in the form of EMR, the one thing that they'll do is lose kinetic, which means they're slowing down. And essentially, they should be spiraling in to the nucleus and crash into it. Okay, but maybe this takes a while or something. No. From everything Rutherford could see, from the way he was approaching calculations and everything like that, this is basically instantaneous. Electrons wouldn't be able to continue their orbit, if you want to think of it that way. But that's the only thing that his model predicts can be happening. So he's got this paradox. Everything from his experiment predicts his model is the real model, but this says there's something missing. And what we've got to wait for is the next scientist to come along to make a jump. Because even though Rutherford is trying to keep up on all the new modern stuff, something like quantum mechanics is not a strong point for him. And he's not necessarily seeing where maybe there could be connections between what he's looking at here and quantum mechanics and something else. So we do have to wait for the next person. And that's where we end up for now. Thank you very much. Have yourself a good day.